To the Skills Committee. Can I draw everyone to order, please? Nick and Sam and everyone else. Sorry, it's 10 o'clock and we ought to start because we can. Sorry to pick on you two. Lots of people were talking. So I think we are now ready to start the meeting and go online. Thank you very much to all the members who are here on time. I know that Sam Wakeford is going to be joining us in about 5 minutes, so I'll do that when we come to the proper announcements. But I'm just checking, are we now live? Okay, so we will formally start. Welcome to this meeting of the Combined Authority Skills and Employment Committee and to Civic Suite in Pathfinder House. So I'm just checking for the things that I'm supposed to be saying. I have a feeling that there are a bunch of things I'm supposed to be saying. Yes. So first of all, this meeting is in public and recording and reporting from it are welcome. But if you have your mobile phones with you, if you could please turn them to silent or vibrate, that would be really helpful. I don't think we have any fire checks or anything of that nature this morning. So if there is a fire alarm, if we can all exit the building, it's actually a very easy building to get out of, but I don't know where the muster point is, but I'm sure it will be fine and that will not happen. Announcement. So due to the changes in leadership at Peterborough City Council, we have a new member of this committee, Councillor Peter Hiller. And his substitute member, Councillor John Howard, who will be replacing Councillor Lynn Ayres and her substitute, Councillor Jackie Allen. They are not able to be present this morning given the changes happened at the end of last week, so it was very short notice for them. But I do think it's really important that this committee thank Councillor Ayres and Councillor Allen for their work on this committee over many, many years. They've been really stalwart members of this committee. I think Councillor Ayres may have been here since the committee was first set up. So I think it would be very, if you're willing, if we could send them our formal thanks and maybe ask Joe to send an email from the committee. Is the committee happy for me to do that on behalf of the committee? I think I'm seeing nods around the room. I hope that's the case. So we will send our formal thanks to Councillor Ayres and to Councillor Allen, but in particular to Councillor Ayres, who's been a really, really helpful member of this committee for a long time. So other than those apologies, I have apologies for Sam Wakeford, but only for being slightly late. So he should be joining us in a moment. And I think other than that, Joe, we have everyone here. So welcome. It's very good to see you all. We also have Judith visiting us from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's very nice to have you with us, Judith. Thank you as rapporteur. Next item on the agenda, does any member wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or a non-statutory disclosable interest on any items being considered today? I don't see any, but of course, if there at any point during the meeting you realise that you do have an interest, they can be disclosed at any point. Item 2 is the minutes and the action log. Is the committee happy to approve the minutes from the 4th of September as an accurate record? Are there any comments on the minutes? And if not, I will sign them as an accurate record shortly. And the action log to note. Does anyone, first of all, have any questions or anything new to report on the action log? Claire, is there anything you wanted to say about it? No. Does anyone have any questions on the action log? In which case we will note the action log and that can be reported as well. Third item on the agenda is public questions. There have been no public questions submitted for this meeting. And the fourth item on the agenda is the Combined Authority Forward Plan. So the forward plan is in the agenda. I'm not aware that there are any major changes that have been made to it since it last came to us. Does anyone have any comments on it? And if not, we can take this as noted. Welcome, Sam. Okay, we will note the forward plan. And then we will move on to our one of our serious items, which is the Growth Works update, item 5, which Steve Clark, Acting Associate Director for Business, will introduce. Is Steve in the room or online?
Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, Steve.
Excellent. Apologies, I'm not there in person. I'm joined to present this item by Nigel Parkinson as well, chair of the Growth Company, which is where the contract for GrowthWorks is managed from. So this report is the usual update report. It covers the period up to quarter 11 of delivery, the 11th quarter of works in the programme. I think the last report to the Skills Committee was in July, which covered the period up till end of April. So we've got almost 6 months worth of additional activity has taken place since the last report. And the key headlines initially on the performance of this particular report show that there's been quite a strong period. So of the 3 key contract measures and outcomes, new jobs, learning outcomes and apprenticeships, all have moved quite considerably since the last report, and we've had a good period. So total jobs reported last time was 4,102. We're now reporting on 6,247.5 jobs contributed to the program or attributed to the program up to the period end of September. This is the best. Well, the last quarter was the best performing quarter of the whole program. It probably shows that we've had all the challenging period of time when the program was launched and other key things have happened during the first 2 years of the program, but now things are kind of coming into play. There's also obviously the brand is known, the work that started early on with coaching companies, some of those are coming to fruition now. So that's why we're seeing quite a good outturn in terms of performance on those key contract outcomes. In terms of skills learning outcomes, 1,500 now, again, good drive on performance, only 200 left to get against the target. Belief is from the contractor they will exceed that particular measure. Apprenticeships still remains a challenge when you look at how many are left to get in the programme, but a considerable number were put on in the last quarter, 240 being the best performance in a month of September. And that performance is continuing to the end of the programme. And some of the changes that were made during the last year of the programme and the way the approach is being taken on the skills team now is beginning to yield some good results. And we'll keep that momentum to the end of the programme and then transitioning into the skills service that follows within CPCA. In terms of other highlights through the programme, the numbers of companies engaged with has peaked in the growth coaching. That particular service line is now not looking to do new business development as we look towards winding down end of the programme. And same with the grants tally line. Equity still remains live and valid, and we're planning to still see a number of companies coming forwards for equity investment before the end of the programme. The Growth Hub has been transferred into CPCA as of 1st of November, so they will now be reporting via CPCA side. The work continues there for Growth Hub team. The Net Promoter Score for the last quarter, the quarter under question here, was 44%, which is classified as good under that particular measurement system. That's above the previous quarter, which was 36, although response rates still remain incredibly low for that particular survey. And we are planning to run one further survey right at the end of the programme, targeting the whole cadre of companies that have used the programme over the last 3 years, just to get one final assessment of customer satisfaction. I'll pause there in case Nigel wants to say anything about performance before I cover the contract and exit plan.
Not really, Steve. I think you covered it really well, as always. other than to say, obviously, that the overall performance versus targets is very pleasing. The skills, particularly apprenticeships, as Steve points out, remains to be a challenge. Though you have to reflect, you look at apprenticeships across the country, there also seems to be an issue there as well. But I think they're sort of bucking the trend a little bit in September, but still a lot of work to do there.
Thank you, Nigel. And so just jumping back to the exit plan, which is appended to this particular paper, we've signed and agreed that exit plan off with the contractor now. This sort of plots and sets out the activities and the process till the end of contract at 31st December and slightly beyond, where we may need relevant information or audit requirements. But essentially, the plan covers, as you would expect, the key parts of handling staff transfer, those that are coming across to new in-house programs within CPCA, and then processes around handling information with customers, clients, communications, and all of the data, CRM, etc. Obviously, with skills, the UK SPF is funding a new programme that starts from the 1st of January, and most of the staff that are currently working in the skills team at GrowthWorks will be transferring across into the new programme. And so that means there's no issues around stopping business development, targeting, positioning, because we can obviously roll quite a lot of that over and continue to work with those clients, which is very, very helpful, because a shutdown would have meant that we would obviously be unlikely to be engaging certain clients or starting particular pieces of work and then not following through. I think there's quite a lot of data in the exit plan that is appended to the report. You'll see there's the timelines are all listed out and the key milestones. So I won't attempt to try and relay all of that. We will be planning a programme closure report. The contractors are going to do that in January, early January, which will include a full breakdown of everything they've done over 3 years. It will be broken by local authority district as well. I apologise, there's no local authority district breakdown tables in this report this time round. That will all be coming in early January as part of the whole programme closure package. And so there'll be full reports as to what's been done across 3 years. I think, yeah, I'll pause there. Nigel, I don't know if you've got anything else to say on exit.
No, thanks, Steve.
Okay, so I guess it's any questions from the committee.
Thank you very much indeed, Steve and Nigel, for a very positive report this time. I've got questions from Eileen and then Sam.
I just wanted to ask whether any qualitative research has been done with employers about the outcomes for them as a result of the coaching, in terms of how it might have changed their business.
Yes. So obviously the Net Promoter Score that we reference in the report does ask certain questions. Obviously, it's mainly about recommendation and the quality of service. We have undertaken, so that there's a part of that touches on the outcomes quality of the programme for their business. We have undertaken some surveying aside from that within the GrowthWorks coaching line about the impacts that it's had on businesses. To date, that's been kept, not shared externally. With the programme closure report that I referenced, we plan to bring it forward in there to include lessons learned, some of the impact reference points, if you like, that's been derived. There are a myriad of case studies, as you can imagine, from a 3-year programme, which covers quite a number of those businesses that have used the coaching and then, or any parts of the service, and have gone on to, explain how it's impacted their business. There is a final point as well. Sorry, rambling answer. We are going to undertake a full impact evaluation post the end of the programme, and so we will be looking to obviously obtain some metrics around the kind of levels of impact this programme has had across all the businesses.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam, and then Vic.
Thank you. Got a couple of questions, but I might start with the one on the exit plan, as that's what was presented most recently, and then I might come back after Vic if you'll indulge me, Chair. Thanks enormously for all the detail and detailed appendices in the report. And absolutely right, there's a lot of detail in the exit plan. Appendix 3, I was jolly relieved we get papers digitally these days, because the size of text I think would have defeated me otherwise on the extraordinary Gantt chart. So my apologies if the answer to what I'm about to ask is contained there and I've missed it, but presumably there is there's clearly a piece around business continuity and support as the program's exited from the contractor. But I'm assuming there's also a piece around disseminating and transferring knowledge to individual constituent authorities, sort of districts, and of course others that are not technically districts, before they correct us. But I just wonder if you can just elaborate on that, please, because it feels like there's a lot of information that we wouldn't wish to get lost, even if in theory CPCA is inheriting it. I'd be keen that our constituent authorities and their economic development teams are sort of maximising what we can absorb as well.
Yeah, that's very, very good question, and we have a parallel conversation running with the local authority economic development officers about how the programme could be broken into various parts. So the skills activity, Claire and the team have a plan and have already brought to this committee in September the proposals under which skills, the CRM. Everything is logged on the CRM, HubSpot CRM, which CPCA, it's our licenses that the contractor is using. All data, all CRM, all records remains with CPCA. So it's within our gift to be able to share that with whoever we then work with. So if it's local authorities, if it's other partners, we're able to do that. In terms of the other parts of the service, other than skills, so the Growth Hub, we'd already taken a paper to the business board about a Team Cambridgeshire approach, an expanded team that was approved. We're working on that with the local authorities. We'll be working in collaborative partnership on how we handle business support going forwards, and the same with inward investment. So hopefully that can allay any fears you may have that anything will be lost, but we think we have control over being able to pick up and run with most of the activity, or at least not lose the detail for someone else to pick up and run with it. I don't know if Nigel wants to add anything to that.
Other than the final review that Steve referred to in January, our intention will be to make sure we've got as many stakeholders as possible to attend that. So create the opportunity for further questions to make sure we don't have any gaps, and so hopefully all the local authorities will be represented at that session as well.
Thank you, Steve and Nigel. Sam doesn't have a further question, which is great. I think I would just add that one of the things that I think will be a benefit of this team moving into the CPCA is that it will actually be easier for districts to know where to come to get this information, because CPCA is a partner that they work with frequently and increasingly, I hope. Whereas I think trying to navigate through kind of contracting arrangements that CPCA has with other people is more difficult. So it should be easier for that to work more smoothly in the future than it potentially has been in the past. Vic.
Hi, good morning all. and thanks. I've got three parts to my comments, and the first one relates to the outreach of companies. It's always difficult to get companies to sign up to these programs, and I think seeing the latest period of results has been excellent, and I think that something's really starting to get into gear. And Steve mentioned the brand is known now. So I think that's positive. I was rather cynical for some time over how we were actually engaging with companies, but I think we've managed to get to a really good place. That's the first part of this. The second part I wanted to say was the volume of data. And look, I know the intention is to give us everything, so we've got everything, but what it actually does is it drags us down into the weeds, which we just can't, as a committee, allow ourselves to be dragged too far into the weeds, because you then pick your favorite bits that you know well, and you sometimes miss the more strategic intent. So I would like to see these reports tailored to our committee, so specifically we're seeing the skills focus of this work rather than the entirety of the work. And to finish, the final point, Councillor Eileen mentioned earlier, the qualitative. I can give anecdotal feedback from companies. When a company has benefited from this service, I've never ever heard anything bad. I've always heard good things. But when you do talk to a company about what they've got from this, firstly, it takes a very long time for them to get any improvement from advice and guidance they're given. Secondly, they often haven't remembered or attributed that's where I was told to do X or Y. So it's really difficult when looking at results of this nature to be precise, because sometimes something you were told 2 years ago, you now take up and follow the advice on, but at the time you weren't ready for. Sorry, that's quite a lot, but I'm really positive about the last quarter's results. I do think it's showing it in a great direction. And I just wanted to add, from a business perspective, I think they're doing a very good job.
Thanks, Vic. I think that was mostly positive feedback. I don't know whether Steve or Nigel want to pick anything up on it. I might just comment on the reports bit in a minute, but Steve.
Yeah, well, the on the reporting point, I mean, actually, in a funny kind of way, bringing everything back in house and running them more focused units rather than together in one program like this means we will have different reports. That is a given. From going forwards from January, we will have different reports, and they will come in different ways. So there will be dedicated SP-backed skills reports for this. So yeah, I think that will change.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on Vic's comment around the qualitative piece of this, and I think he's actually spot on. That the people don't always remember what started things. You'll see on the NPS scores that we do have a couple of detractors, and we've had the sort of detractors through the whole program, and most of the feedback we've had when we have had detractors have really been around either they haven't understood the offering, and that's probably a reflection on our messaging, or at some point the paperwork has taken too long, or a third element is where they've made a grant application, and I'm very proud of the investment panel that we've had that's been very kind of very critical about some of the grant applications and making sure we're representing taxpayers' money really well. And so that's often meant that we've turned down, or we've given only a fraction of the grant that was applied for to allow the work to be done. So where we've turned them down, that tends to be where we've caused the most angst. But generally speaking, the feedback quality has been good. And as Steve said, we had the case studies, and what we also have is we've got quite a few of the people that were involved in case studies have been guest speakers at various lunch and learn sessions. So it's been quite good to see the community that we've been able to reach out to actually playing a role in trying to help us reach out to other SMEs, which I think then has helped us get that additional penetration that Vic was talking about that we've had more recently. So yeah, and appreciate the positive comments, Vic. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Claire wanted to come in briefly. Yeah, just to There we go. No.
Yeah, just 2 points to pick up. One on the apprenticeship figures for September. I mean, it's interesting to look at the national figures of a drop in SME apprenticeships of 13% on the year. So although it's not directly analogous in terms of time, I think that to achieve anything at the moment in apprenticeships is good, and we know we've got a long way to go. The second thing I think, which is looking forward, which I think is a real opportunity for everyone, for the combined authority and all of us as partners around the room, is this brings all this knowledge and relationships in-house into the family. And rather than actually working with an organisation where we get reporting in numbers, what we're actually doing is forming relationships which have got a halo effect across all we do. So one employer, the potential to engage with one employer across a variety of what we do, either the combined authority or in all the different ways that we engage, rather than it being a relationship at arm's length. So culturally, I think this is a really interesting step forward in terms of more cohesion for us.
Thank you. Really helpful. I am aware that I should have introduced Claire more thoroughly at the beginning of this meeting. Claire has stepped in very kindly as interim in following Fliss's departure. We are very lucky to have her. And I think probably some of you may have had meetings with Claire. If not, I'm sure you will. I think she's doing a brilliant job in stepping in at short notice. So thank you. Sam, I think you wanted to come back. Keep going. Oh, yes, sorry, Claire, you need to turn yours off.
Thank you. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think Claire is very welcome. Very pleased that we've got you with us to help with this. I think linked to the response to my earlier question, and of course, Lucy, forgive me, the chairs. Comments in response to that as well before is reassuring, but sort of links to a kind of particular interest of mine on this committee around helping make sure we really are the sum of our parts in terms of what the CPCA does and is sort of structured to do, the relationships it's able to hold, while also plugging into the sort of more localized economic insights of our constituent authority teams. Sort of on that theme as well, I just wonder if I could bring us back to the main paper, 5.1, the financial implications. And forgive me if I missed this in initial introduction of the paper, but could we just dwell for a moment on the small matter of the 4 million unspent capital grant component? If there hasn't been a sort of, well, I'm interested in how we're working out how best to use that in the equity or shares referenced. If there hasn't been a formal reach out to risk of sounding like a broken record to individual LAED teams, could I urge we do that as part of the process, because there are sectors and industries that have, as we've talked about in reports before on the certain, haven't been captured as comprehensively as others. As for exactly how we're divvying it, I'm not sort of suggesting a precise 666k each per authority area if I've divided by the right number of authorities. But I'm just keen for some assurance around how we're making sure that we're not missing the local insights in making decisions about how best to make use of that money, please.
So just in response to that, so the service obviously continues, and obviously this report was only until the end of September. So the team in Growthworks have still been out there engaging through all of the stakeholders, partners, including local authorities, but funders, if you like, where typically you find companies who are seeking finance. It is in the equity service line, just to be clear. The capital grants line is all allocated, awarded out. So this is definitely to do with that line. So we are expecting to see more companies coming through to our investment panels this month and potentially in December as well. We have agreed with the contractor that obviously if it gets to the end of the contract and we're still doing paperwork, we will work in the background, CPCA, to ensure that we complete that. So confidence is still there that we may still see enough companies to draw the money. If we don't, and the money is not awarded, that funding is not lost. It remains within the CPCA's budget, the recycled LGF budget, and can be reallocated. And we would look to come back with other potential avenues, programs, projects which we could use that funding for. Obviously, it'd be good to see it go out to the companies as intended through this program, but because the equity started very late in the program, you know, it's not unsurprising that we may still have a small part left at the end. But as I say, it's not a concern that it can't be reused, is in that sense. And as Nigel referenced, keen to make sure that, you know, as it's taxpayers' money, it's not rash decisions at the end, just for the sake of getting it out the door.
Thank you. I think that last point is a very important one, Steve, that it's more important to make sure that the money is going to being well spent than that it's spent within a particular time frame. Nitin.
So I've been part of the team there, and particularly on the team who've sort of awarded the grant, so I know quite a lot about how we've done it and not. On the equity one, that's been pretty difficult, actually, because of the rules of the companies having to recruit at the same time as looking for more equity. And that's always a challenge for startups. But I think we should stick with it, because it's been quite interesting to find the companies who've been around the area who are not necessarily the ones that get funded because of where they start. But that's been a challenge to find the right sort of companies fitting the bill in that sense. So it's been hard work to find the companies who should be awarded. It's based on the criteria. I mean, you know, you can change the criteria and say we'll give it to any startup who comes along, but that won't necessarily be good money for what we want to do, which has been really the reason for why that's slowed down.
Thank you, Nitin. Really helpful. The other Sam.
Thank you. Yeah, is this working? Yeah. Just to go back to the apprenticeships point, I think the news of 240 apprenticeships delivered in September is very positive, but it is still below the targets that we were hoping for. And I think as a committee, we have had quite a long running concern about apprenticeship delivery throughout the contract, really. So I guess the question I want to ask is, are we confident in understanding why we've had problems with that delivery? Or do we perhaps need to give it a specific review after the contract has completed, just to make sure we've learned the lessons for when it comes in-house? And I know there is the national context, but despite that, I'm not sure it really explains all of it. So do we need to look at it in more detail, really?
Just in answer to that, it has been something that's been in sharp focus throughout the programme, because as you rightly point out, we've been behind target for most of the programme. I think there's been the one could say the initial approach via the contractor was acknowledged as being perhaps not the right way to go. So trying to implement whole system change across the piece to drive the numbers of apprenticeships, and actually that's switched in this last year to actually trying to just work with the companies instead of trying to change the system across providers, companies and everything else and influence that. Just work directly with companies and try and service the needs and get them onto apprenticeships where possible. And that seems to be showing it's working. They've also introduced different organisation to help with their marketing and approach to companies, which seems to have had a really good effect as well. So I know Fliss had previously made quite a lot of commentary in this committee about the actual approach being wrong, but I think they've finally listened to that in this third year, and it's beginning to show. But whether it's in time, which I think you're intimating as well, if it's in time to actually achieve the full target, it's probably hard to say. I think it might be not, well, who knows, but I think it may not make the full target by the end. But as I indicated, the fact that we're transferring the team in and the work on apprenticeships is still a sharp focus for Claire and her team, I think we can pick this approach up that's starting to work and really run with it and drive it. So Yeah.
Yeah,
Nigel,
just,
if you want to add anything there.
yeah. Firstly, I mean, Steve referred to the fact that the original hypothesis was more kind of a system change approach from the contractor. I wouldn't necessarily throw that away, because I think there's a lot of good stuff in there to be considered, but for the pace of execution, I don't think it was particularly helpful. I think the other comment I'd make is that the apprenticeship offering for a lot of SMEs, not all SMEs, but for a lot of SMEs, takes a lot of hand holding to get them through the process, from identifying the need to even finding the solution, matching with colleges, getting the right young person in the position. And so I think where we've seen the success more recently is because we've just been doing a lot more hand holding. So it does make you question how clear the offering is for companies to be able to pick it up and run with it independently without too much support, which maybe reflects on the national scale as well. I don't know. Claire could probably add to that, but certainly it feels that there's a lot more energy needed to help SMEs get across the line with this particular subject.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to pick up on of some of the national things, and I possibly would say this given I've got to kind of look at this going forward. So they're not meant to be excuses, but this is absolutely the fact. SMEs, since goodness knows when, trying to get SMEs to engage with apprenticeships has been horrendous. How do I know that? I used to chair the government's apprenticeship board, and in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, SMEs were everybody was just had their head in their hands. So that's the first thing to say in terms of the dynamic. I think the second thing is the complexity. Took me a year to speak apprentice. So I used to go to meetings. I had absolutely no idea what anybody was talking about, and that is a real barrier. The other thing I think that's in this area, which is going to be interesting, is certainly in my other careers, normally where it's been successful, there's been a large organisation or a few large organisations in a sector that have absolutely acted as magnets, catalysts for supply chains for smaller organisations like Rolls-Royce. My employer was the BBC. We had 1,000 apprentices a year. I learnt from Rolls-Royce by holding their hand. BAE Systems, Jaguar Land Rover, all of those companies have really, really interesting ways of engaging. Microsoft puts it into their procurement contracts that if you do deals with Microsoft, you have to have an apprentice proportionate on the size of you. We perhaps don't have that ecology here. So I think one other thing that worth saying, there's lots going on nationally to try and engage SMEs. I mean, I work with the DFE on something called the Flexi Apprenticeship Model. I read in FE Weekly that it's really struggling. I thought we'd made it as easy as we possibly could for SMEs, and the portable apprenticeship too. So I don't know the answer here, but all I'm saying is that we'll work really hard to try and bring everybody together and to understand the dynamic. But it is really tough if you've got an SME base to engage them with apprenticeships.
Nitin.
Oh.
Sorry, just to add to that, and it's always dangerous, a sample of one, but I went to meet a GrowthWorks team on apprenticeships a week Friday ago, and there was a guy in there who's really keen on taking apprenticeships, and he's been doing it for the last 10 years, I think, on and off. But he said he can't cope with the admin of it, and particularly small businesses who take one or two on. And I'm not sure how you solve that, because the way the system's designed at the moment, where they have to go to so many places to actually achieve that, he said he'd need at least half a person a week to just manage that, and there isn't enough resources. So, we talk about a lot of apprenticeships, but it's not in our gift, if the rules are as they are, to actually change that unless we do something drastic locally.
Absolutely. Claire, do you want to come back?
There are models to help SMEs, the portable apprenticeship, the ATA model, the flexi apprenticeship. There are lots of models. As yet, no one's actually managed to really crack it. But in conceptual terms, there are ways of, people who can take the load, taking the load. So, I guess our challenge is, can we get all sides? Because employers have to want to do it as well. And that was my challenge. My sector was the creative sector, and it was almost impossible, we found, to get the SMEs to engage, however much we tried. So it's a two-way, three-way, four-way with all the partners coming together.
Thank you. I think that's been a really useful discussion. I'm coming to Vic and then to Ian.
Just to make Nitin's sample of one a sample of two, the chamber, when I was with them, we took on an apprentice and it failed dismally. It failed for the apprentice and it failed for us because it was far too resource hungry for us to be able to get any value from this apprentice and to give the apprentice the value that that person needed while with us, because they need a tremendous amount. Of course they do. They're not simply coming in to be a pair of hands on the cheap. So we're all saying the same thing, I think. For SMEs, it's incredibly hard if they're small to have the resources to support taking on an apprenticeship. And I think that's pretty universal, as Claire has said.
Thanks, Vic. Ian.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. My role was economic growth at Fenland. I mean, we talk to a lot of businesses, and I know that being in a very rural area, another problem that comes up with apprenticeships is people start them, and people, the youngsters that are taking the apprenticeships on, then find the lure of earning money elsewhere, and a lot of people leave the apprenticeships because of low pay, cost of getting to work. And that I've heard that from several businesses that have said they have apprentices come, and the apprentice says, "Mum needs me to find a job. I can't carry on with this." And I think that, from what I've heard, certainly in a rural area, that is something that does play quite badly to apprentices, because it's completing the apprenticeship. If not, it doesn't work, and it is hard to keep an apprenticeship online where people can afford to stay and finish that apprenticeship. So I think certainly in a rural area, that is something that I've heard several times in Fenland when visiting businesses.
Thank you. I think there's a really consistent picture coming out here of just how difficult it is to try and make what is a very bureaucratic system work for smaller businesses. I also hear Claire's passion for this area, so I suspect we will hear more about it. But I also think it's probably a place where there's space for us to lobby government for some central changes, because actually it feels to me as if this is not a system that's going to be as effective as it could be unless there are changes in the way it's managed centrally. But that's not something we can control. It is something we could potentially ask for an update on at some point. But thank you all very much for that very clear message from this committee. I don't see any further questions. So at that point, I think this was a report for noting. So we don't need to vote on it. Thank you very much, Steve and Nigel, and good luck with the next quarter of trying to keep up with the last quarter. It will be great to hear the next, which might be the final report for some things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. We will now move to item 6 on the agenda, which is the update on Anglia Ruskin University. I think I'm going to be inviting Jim to come to the table to report on this one. Jim Cunningham is a new member of staff at the Combined Authority. Now I'm trying to. Are you interim as well, Jim? I think, or yes. Picking up all the work around ARU and the Peterborough University project. So this is an update on that. It's very nice to have you with us, Jim, and I'm sure the committee will be pleased to hear from you. So thank you.
Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to present to you. I joined the CA about 5 or 6 weeks ago, so quickly getting my feet under the table in what is a really exciting project to be involved in, because from an economic development perspective, it rings all the correct bells around what are we doing for our young people, what are we doing in terms of engagement with our local businesses, and how does the fact that we now have a university in Peterborough help enhance the marketing and the investment strategies to bring more investment into Peterborough on the back of the fact that it is a university city. So my paper summarises what's been happening today and focuses mainly on, as I have been doing over the last few weeks, on the physical delivery of the project. So we have phase 1, which has been completed now, and students now studying at the university. Phase 2, which is the innovation and research building, now completed, and the ground floor of that building has been taken by the university, and which sounds a very exciting project. I can't wait to see it. It's called an extended reality centre, and it's using artificial intelligence, extended reality to create a working environment for the students at the university. So, for example, healthcare students could be undertaking as real life theatre work within within the university, within that facility. And the rest of the building is currently being marketed to innovation and research-led companies, and we have interest in from those companies, or from companies who are interested in taking that space. So we just have to work our way through that in terms of the development of that and the future letting of the space. And then the third phase, which is underway and due for completion in July next year, is a combination of what, as you will know from earlier reports, is called the Living Lab, which is a community education facility aimed at heightening the awareness of science, technical, engineering, mathematics opportunities, otherwise known as STEM, for the local community, as well as further academic space. So a very exciting project, all in this day and age, all being delivered at the moment to time and to budget, which I think is very much a positive. My report touches on those phases, and then the future phase of the physical delivery of the project is how do we expand the campus and what other facilities around research and development can we bring into the campus. And the report touches that as well. I then go on to provide a list of achievements that university has delivered on since opening. There's quite a substantial list there over the 2 or 3 pages in the report. The university itself is now winning awards for its performance, so it's making a substantial impact. Moving forward, looking to, for even greater integration with the local community and with the local business community in terms of a course curriculum. One area that's not covered in the report, but is one that I can bring a further report to you in due course, is around the metrics that we will use to assess the university's performance and impact. And at the moment, as I said, the focus has been on physical delivery. But in terms of that, the performance and impact, we're looking at a series of measures to agree with the university that fall into sort of 4 categories. So the number of students, where those students are coming from, are there underrepresented communities now availing themselves of higher education opportunities because the university is there? And then crucially, the raw numbers, that like student numbers are quite a raw statistic in themselves. It's about progression. So how many are going on to complete their degrees? How many are going on to a future employment? And that needs to be captured as we move forward. And then another area around local engagement, the reach out to the local community. And finally, the impact that the university is having on wider economic activity in the area. So is the work that Claire and her team are doing in terms of promoting apprenticeships, leading to more people using apprenticeship as an opportunity to go through university? Is that wider economic activity happening across the patch? Are there more people going into HE from the area? So that's the way we're moving the project forward. What I'm asking for in the paper today is to consider ways in which the work of this committee can become further aligned to the development of the university. And by way of example, Claire and I met with the principal of the university about 10 days ago to discuss ways that we can work with them on further engagement into our harder to reach communities and bringing young people from those communities forward to be given the opportunity of higher education. And we also need to look at how we can develop apprenticeship programs that are aligned to the university's activities through the need that we are seeing being expressed through our business community. So all in all, a very exciting project. I mean, there's an extensive list of the achievements that the university has made in its first year that I would draw your attention to, and all very, very positive at the moment, and a really good news story for Peterborough and the wider Cambridgeshire and Peterborough area. happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Jim, and for a very positive report. Open to members. Eileen.
So I'm jumping in first. Thank you. I've been on this committee since 2018, and at that time the university was a car park. So it's been wonderful to see it grow. And when we had a meeting there a few months ago, it was just really nice to see the building and see it's all become a reality. I've got a couple of questions. The first one, this is just out of curiosity. The Research and Innovation Centre was intended, first of all, to have a company called Photocentric there that would provide experiences for the students, and that seems to have gone now. So you've got the virtual reality centre, and I'm just curious. I had a break for about 9 months when I wasn't on this committee, so I was just curious about how that came about, the difference. My other question, which is very different, I've noted that 84% of the students chose Peterborough University because they didn't have to move house in order to study. And I just wonder how ongoing, whether there's still that large field of unmet demand. That obviously was our unmet demand for people wanting to go to university, and whether in the future that field might become more restricted, and whether there will come a time when university will need to provide accommodation. And when I think about student accommodation, I'm thinking about the student experience of being in halls of residence, which I don't know how Peterborough University achieves that sort of social um, environment that people find at university, which is part of the university experience.
I'll take that question in its two parts. So firstly, in terms of the Innovation Research Centre, the company Photocentric is no longer progressing their interest in the site for their own business reasons. But that the building's in 3 floors. There's the ground floor, which is where the extended reality centre is being built. There's the middle floor, which is where Photocentric would have gone. And then there's a top floor, which has been converted to accommodate smaller interests. So we've got live interests in the full second floor at the moment, which obviously I can't go into at this stage. And similarly with the companies who have expressed an interest in taking part of the incubator space on the top floor. So I'm confident that we can report further developments on that as we move forward. The second point is that you know yes, there has been some discussion about student accommodation, and in terms of the numbers, obviously a big Peterborough was identified as a higher education cold spot, which was the rationale in part for us putting together the various fundings and business plans to secure the investment to deliver the new university. So there will be a continuing focus on providing that opportunity for Peterborough residents, and a continuing focus on reaching harder to reach communities within the area to engage those young people in the prospect of a higher education opportunity. So I think that the answer on the student accommodation is that demand will you know, if the demand is there, then there's a business case to be assembled to achieve that. But at the moment, it's a wait and see, I think, on that one. And I accept that, you know, for people of my age, the university experience was about getting away from home. But I think they now realise with the sort of the dynamics and the opportunities of that particular issue around Peterborough being a cold spot, that we focus on, as far as we can at the moment, in attracting local residents to that opportunity.
Thanks, Jim. Nick.
Sorry, I've taken the time to warm up, but I'm keen to always talk about this success story for our area, particularly for Peterborough City, and obviously a success for the combined authority. I'm very much aware of some of the challenges. You reiterated how we've had to adapt to challenges that have come as opportunities have come and gone with regard to the next stage of the university. And I'm very much aware that one of the things we've talked about is a focus in Peterborough about smart manufacturing, a focus on green technologies, something which, again, we should be embracing. But I was wondering, how far have we looked at into other sectors? I only say this from a sort of for public record. I was out and about with representatives of the creative industry, Creative UK, Tuesday last week, and I was particularly heartened to note that as an organisation, they were highlighting how the creative industries, those who are based around the cultural development, were targeting this area, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and particularly Peterborough. And I wondered, are we as an organisation being mindful of opportunities in other strategy, other areas of business development, and who may be wanting to invest alongside the university development opportunities for student courses?
I think, Mayor, there's a section of the report in terms of the university's actions and activities that mentions their involvement with the creative and cultural sector. So I think the message is that any the industrial sector or artistic sector that's looking to develop, that has an alignment with the university, that can help shape curriculum, would be welcomed. And I think Ross has got Ross Renton, who's the principal of the university, has very much got an open mind and an engaging mind in that area, because I think university curricula will be developed by the interests of the academic staff of the university, but also by the local industry and local communities who identify a need. So I think bringing all that together is going to be really important.
Okay. And another question, I'm always ambitious, following on actually from Eileen's question around, it's great we've focused on and we're delivering for our local communities. We've certainly seen some real benefits there. And I'm asking about internationally, in terms of what is the university doing? I know that Cambridge, as a university in the south of the area, is known worldwide, but how far have we been able to work with Ross and the team at ARU? Because again, I have been very pleasantly surprised by the opportunities out and about where Peterborough could be linked with international opportunities.
Well, there are international students studying at the university just now, as you know, and I think that's to grow the university. I think we need to look at local residents, which is the primary purpose behind the university, but also international students as well, because the engagement between the international students and the local students can help bring each other on, one in terms of integration with the community for the international students, and other aspirationally for the young people who are seeing what other people are coming in to do and what they're studying at postgraduate level. So I think it's all about achieving a happy mix in that area and taking it forward. But certainly, from talking to the principal at the university, he is keen to explore both avenues, the development of that university for the local people and also the international students.
I think Claire wants to say something about creative industry. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'll come to Nitty.
Yeah, it was just to pick up in a way to bring those two things together, really, both the creative sector and the international dimension. Because, if you look across the creative sector, particularly where you've got an area which is so heavily based on micro businesses, the biggest challenge, and this isn't me, this is if you talk to any sector organisation creatively or its leaders, is how you get people who are brilliant at R&D and innovation to commercialise it, to take it to market, to have a national and international product. So one of the things that we started very early conversations on is what might that look like in terms of if you're trying to take those innovators and actually support them with the skills and the culture and the knowledge that they would need in order to take their product to market and beyond. So that ability to export their idea, certainly in this area with such an emphasis on micro businesses. I mean, I think nationally 9 in 10 don't export, but I suspect for the creative sector here that's more. So I think that out to the world, unlocking that economic potential is one of the key things that we've got to look at with the creative sector.
Very briefly, Nick, because I'm coming to meeting. So
it will be brief. Obviously, I have the benefit of obviously meeting Ross on many occasions, and I was just a question, as I've not been a regular attender here, has Ross actually come to this committee recently? And I mean, obviously, not to take away from obviously an officer, it's just a suggestion. I think Ross, when he comes along, the passion that he has for ARU comes over in abundance, and I would suggest it would also be an opportunity for us to kind of all question him, and it would, with if it's okay with you, Chair, maybe a suggestion that we something that we do in the near future.
noted. Thank you. Nitin.
Okay. Just a couple of points on Nick's view on the university and how quickly we expand the courses. The idea was to actually have the courses that we've started with, particularly with what the local work people wanted. I think if we start doing too many things with it before it's even settled down, then we're going to do what we normally do, is spend no money and effort. And, you know, we were talking about Germany before, and that's what they do. So let's make this work the way it was planned, and it is doing. But creativity, there's lots of places you can go. I mean, I work at Essex University, where we started 4 years ago to do exactly what you said. They had to spend £80 million even to get to where we are now with trying to get people from abroad coming to it. And that's close to London, so it's easy to say it's a London university. So let's try and make this work where it was, and then start worrying about what we do, because otherwise we'll mess it up. And Ross is exactly the sort of guy you want to keep that narrow field working.
Thanks, Nitin. I'm going to make a couple of comments of my own, and then I'll see whether anyone else wants to come in, because I'm not seeing any at the moment. First of all, Jim, thank you very much for the report. I think it's a really helpful report. For me, the standout thing is the one that Eileen picked up at the beginning, which was that 84% of the students who responded to that survey chose Peterborough, not only because it had the course that they wanted, but also because it meant that they could attend university without moving. And actually, when we're thinking about the university, that was one of the key aims of it, to allow people from that area to get degrees and to progress in their careers. It's really good news. It is really good news. So actually, that in its first year, it's ticking the boxes for what it was intended to do. It's allowing people from Peterborough to make career progression, and the Peterborough area. I'm just going to underline the Peterborough area for Ian and James' benefit, because I know that actually it's not just Peterborough. It's covering a wider area, but people can access it from March and from the kind of the wider area, Whittlesea, all across Fenland, where accessing university is not so easy. So that's really good news. But the other thing I wanted to say also picks up what Eileen was talking about at the beginning, which is the extraordinary progress that there has been over just 5 years. It is amazing how much has happened there in a comparatively short period of time. And looking back a longer period, 18 years ago, I was a councillor in Gloucester when Gloucester University was being set up. I think it's where Ross came from. When I was a councillor in Gloucester and Gloucester University was just beginning, it was doing much of the same kind of thing that Peterborough University is doing. It was offering nursing courses so that local people could progress in their careers. It didn't have its own kind of specialist fields yet. And as universities develop, many of them do develop kind of areas of expertise and specialism that then become known nationally and potentially internationally. But that doesn't happen overnight. And it's not very good to try and pick and choose what those are going to be, because it depends on a wide range of different factors such as which academics turn up there, how much energy they want to put into developing their specialism, what local companies are in the area that also have needs and are willing to kind of contribute. There are some things that are present on the Peterborough site, which are sort of hints about which direction that might go into. So the advanced manufacturing stuff they have there is amazing. Loads and loads of places would be very envious of some of the things that they have on that site that they don't have in other places. So that might give indications. But I think for us to be sort of starting to second guess where the specialisms at Peterborough might be in 18 years' time wouldn't necessarily be helpful. I think we need to let it grow and support that growth. And observe what happens there. And I think it will be really exciting. I think the partnership with ARU is really exciting and really productive for us, partly because of the way that they do their courses, but also the wider expertise. So I think it's a really exciting report. Thank you very much for it, Jim. I think Nick's idea about getting Ross to come and speak to us, I mean, actually, I think even more fun might be for this committee to meet at the university sometime, which I think would be perfectly possible, and it would be really good. Many of us I know have been up there and had a look round and seen what they do, and I know it might be more difficult for Sam and others to get but it would be great to go and have another visit, because it is one of the great success stories of this combined authority. So that's my bit on Peterborough. I don't see anybody else. Go on then, Sam.
Thank you. And of course, this is of enormous interest to us in Hunts as well. We're delighted we've got an opportunity in a northerly as well as a sort of southeasterly direction for young people and others. And I think on that last exchange that we're probably all violently agreeing, because I completely agree with Nick around the level of ambition we're bringing to this, but what is being shown by what is being done, which we're all signed up to, is applying that ambition with respect to taking advantage of the particular factors and strengths we've got. You mentioned manufacturing. Of course, advanced manufacturing is a critical part of our economy here in Hunts. That's of enormous interest to us as well, and I'm sure we can be more ambitious in that direction. Widening participation and access issues in higher education is a world I've worked in various ways in capacities in the past. So this is certainly close to my heart, and I was really delighted in presentation that you flagged the sort of obvious counterpoint to the triumph, frankly, of the numbers we've got in and the growth of students, which is of retention and experience and completion as well. So I know we're already across that because we've already seen it in papers more detailed in the past, but really just to underline that having sort of achieved the success of supporting people in, I think it's going to be a particular interest to this committee going forward to look at how we're managing the inevitable challenges with a more complex student population than many universities will have around that high percentage of people who we infer are living at home. That does make it much harder to build sort of communities, and I know from visits to universities in a previous life that a diverse range of institutions can have challenges there. So I think having a realistic sense of there being difficulties, and life gets in the way as people progress through universities, we all appreciate, but that sight on how students are progressing and completion rates, I think is going to be a key metric for us.
Fantastic, thank you. I don't see any further questions, Jim, so unless there's anything else you want to add, thank you very much for the report, and it is broadly very, very good news from Peterborough, with good luck with finding a tenant for that middle floor. Thank you. Thank you. That report was also for noting, and I think it's been a really good discussion. We will now move on to the Further Education Cold Spots project update, which I think is from Parminder, who is online, and I can see Parminder is there ready for us. Thank you, Parminder.
Good morning, members. Just checking that you can hear me clearly.
Yes, all good.
Great, that's fantastic. So good morning, members. And following an update at the previous Skills Committee in September, members requested a further update at the November committee, given the strategic focus of this project. I'd like to start with a short summary of the background of the projects, given that we've had some recent press interest in this project, but also for any members of the public, local residents tuning in today, and also for the new members. And of course, we've just heard about higher education cold spots and how the combined authority has proactively worked in partnership to address those. And so you could say we have a proud tradition of proactively investing in addressing education cold spots, and having also invested in various FE facilities across Peterborough, Wisbech, Chatteris, Huntingdon, March, and Cambridge. So this is building on that tradition that we've had in this combined authority to tackle those educational cold spots. So within the combined authority's employment and skills strategy, further education cold spots were identified in St Neots and in East Cambridgeshire. And given the participation of adult residents in adult education and learning relative to the population density and the levels of participation across the combined authority's geography. In addition to this, the demographic growth in the 16 to 19 population that is envisaged, and wider growth in the population with the major housing development and the pipeline housing growth that is planned for the area. In addition, linking to the priorities of the combined authority around reducing inequalities and also the added value of economic outputs arising from the FE college footprint in the market towns with increased footfall, employment opportunities, and the upskilling of residents. So a budget of 4.8 million was allocated by the Combined Authority Board following the recommendations from this committee. And this is very much around greasing the wheels for those projects. So moving on to the update for today's committee, and the focus really has been to launch the procurement process for a suitable consultancy to work with us and our partners to deliver a feasibility study for the two locations and to identify a range of strategic options for this committee and the board to consider and approve. The request for quotation was launched on the 16th of October and is live on the online portal, with tenders due on the 13th of November. And we expect to award contracts by the 24th of November. We've established local advisory groups for the two locations, and these are chaired by the respective members of this committee. And these will be reconvened in early December for the consultants to hear from local stakeholders, set out the approach, and also for local stakeholders to steer the project. The scope of the feasibility is wide to look at the demographic growth in the 16 to 19 population, to look at technical education and pathways, travel to learn, as well as the financial and educational case for the project. Plus, of course, the opportunity to align to our net zero ambition. It's envisaged that the consultant will attend the January Skills Committee to provide progress update. And finally, the report also identifies a change to the financial profile of the funding allocation. And this will be included within a finance report to the Combined Authority Board as part of the MTFP process. Thank you, members. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Parminder. I'm looking for questions from other people. Any other comments? Eileen.
So I don't always want to jump in first. For me, one of the main problems with further education, and we know this from the Fenland districts, is transport, and how much of this will be backed up by reliable transport so that people can actually access the further education, because I think that's one of the most important things that helps people achieve their potential, is access.
Thank you, Eileen. I think that the issues with transport are one of the reasons why this project is in front of us, because actually for people from the west and east of the area, transport is a huge issue in order to access really good FE and variety of FE provision. So it is one of the reasons why we're looking at this. It continues to be an issue, as I know you're aware. But I think in terms of the study that's been commissioned, it's more about demography in these areas and growth than transport. But obviously, transport is a part of it. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Paminda.
Oh no, I recognise this is very positive that these opportunities are going to be made available, and that is important, because I know from my past work when I worked in DWP and I worked with unemployed people, first of all, that access to training and giving people opportunities is one of the most important things for them, actually being able to lead a normal life, and that's what many people aspire to, and it is quite often that they may not have done very well at school for various reasons. So, and being able to achieve more later in life. I took my degree when I was in my late 30s, so having done teacher training before that, so people do. It is very good to have all these various opportunities and to be, but again, you need to be able to access them as well. So that's the important thing.
Thank you, Eileen. Did I, James?
You know, looking at the figures and seeing that the chart shows that only 4% of the learning starts by postcode are in East Cambs, shows that we are really one of the major cold spots that needs some help. And in my view, teaching people to do technical skills that we need in the workforce for providing better insulation and changing all the heating methods within our houses is a very high priority, because in 2025 it is proposed that we go away from putting gas and oil fired boilers into our homes. So really, you know, we could be part of the restructuring of the plumbing industry within East Cambs, and doing some specific training to lift the people who are not very well paid in East Cambs, but need to be trained in East Cambs, because again, we don't have very good transport systems from the majority of East Cambs. So my view is that whatever we pour into East Cambs, if we can lift the training starts from above 4%, which is the worst in our area, is most important. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to make a couple of comments of my own before I bring Sam in, just to flag to people where we are with this project, and quite how far there is to go before we can start talking about what particular elements might be being provided. So just to flag up, looking at the paper, there's lots of nice green boxes, but the point at which we've got to is the commission of a feasibility study to look at whether the growth in those areas is justifies the commissioning of this additional provision. And I do think it's important that I make clear in this public space that in a meeting with the heads of FE colleges that are already providing lots and lots of really excellent provision across Cambridgeshire, there is some scepticism about whether the growth in the 16 to 19 population in this area is sufficient to make the provision of new colleges in these places the right answer for these issues. That's why we're doing the work. We will go away and look at the consultants have now been commissioned to go away and look at the actual growth in those populations. I think it's important to say that we need to be very mindful of whatever information they bring back, alongside a very strong recognition from this committee that there is serious need for better provision in those places. So regardless of what comes back, I think the recognition of the need is there, but I think there are a variety of different ways in which that need might be met. It is quite possible that they will come back. I think it's, I mean, we'll see what they come back to say in terms of the numbers and the growth. There is huge growth predicted in both the east and the west of the county, and I'm not sure how mindful FE leads are of quite the extent of that growth, whereas actually local authorities are very aware of the extent of the growth expected in both of those areas. So we will see what the consultants say, but it is, I think, really important that as a committee we are clear that we will be looking at that data and making decisions very clearly on the basis of the data and not going off and spending large amounts of public money on things that we think would be nice to have. It does need to be led by the data. That's why we're having these experts commissioned. It will be really good to see what they say. I think we do also need to be really clear that making quite sure that all young people across Cambridgeshire have as much as possible equal access to a variety of FE provision is really important, not only for our young people but also for our economy, to make sure that we have the skills that we need. So I just want to make it really clear that there's a lot of work and a lot of hoops to jump through before we start thinking about what might be provided where. James, did you want to come back?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, we have some very good FE colleges right on our doorstep, especially in West Suffolk. And the last thing in the world we want to be seen to be doing is to replicating what they're already doing. That's why I believe that we, especially in East Cambs, will have to be more specialised in what we decide to do rather than a broad area which competes with people on our doorstep who are very good at what they're doing.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Sam.
Thank you. Excuse me. I was nodding furiously there, Chair. In part, you beat me to it. Underlining that the project stage. I was just skimming to find the reference in the report that there was drafting talking about broad consensus among local authority partners, but ongoing need for meetings with wider partners to acclimatise the concept, and sort of superb Sir Humphrey language there, Parminder. You've got an alternative career trajectory should you want one. So I was reflecting on how most helpfully to unpack that, which I think you've done really helpfully, Chair. In Huntingdonshire, our aspirations, you know, there are lots of wonderful ways we can see this developing, not unlike Councillor Lay's ideas referenced around the sort of the obvious need for additional skills in growing sectors of what we might call the green economy, linked to other objectives, not least around sort of housing and housing quality and helping residents with comfort of living, cost of living, and so on. But we aren't there yet. We do not want to do anything that destabilises existing FE provision. We agree emphatically with our FE partners on that one, which is why it's so important that we're that we're making the initial step of actually doing that robust assessment, because I think we're optimistic that there may be scope emerging from that, but we don't want to preempt it. The reason I didn't have particular questions, always happy for Councillor Wilson to come in first, is simply because despite all of the capacity challenges, which are obviously very disappointing in terms of us not being where we would wish to be, Parminder has been extremely helpful and accessible in being open to communication throughout. So we in Hunts and I'm sure in East Camps really value that that relationship as we progress with this. Thanks on that one. There is more that could be said around this, but I think, as you rightly said, Chair, taking it in stages, I look forward to subsequent discussions to then move on from that.
Thank you. Nick.
Obviously, going ahead, proceeding with either of these options in these current coal spots has to be analysed. But at the same time, particularly in regard to the area of St Neots, there is obviously quite significant infrastructure growth going around. The housing is already noted, but also the rather large and not unnoticeable project that is the A428, which may in itself improve some of the connectivity and further options may land in that area with regard to East West Rail. It's really keen to understand, are we at the same time in regard to this particular project also having conversations with the A428 group of national highways, looking at some of the opportunities that funding may be forthcoming from the project?
I don't think that, I mean, Piminda can respond, but I don't think that that's something that's been included in this feasibility study. I think this has just been looking at numbers of young people, is my substantial understanding. But Piminda, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mayor Dr. Nick. And just to say that, yes, in the very early conversations did take place a while ago around the opportunities around the A428 and the concept of training for the highways sector. That conversation did take place, but it hasn't progressed any further. And I think, as the chair was saying, we do need to get the feasibility over the line, and then once we've established the case, definitely reopen those conversations and discussions with National Highways, and also, as you identified, the opportunity of the East-West Rail as well, and the connectivity issues, but also upskilling for those two sectors.
Thanks, Piminda. Vic.
Thank you. So I'd like to come in with a point on the A428. Until recently, I was a member of the A428 stakeholders group, which National Highways ran. I also set up a meeting for our mayor with the CEO of National Highways, and there are conversations taking place with them, but they haven't been around the sort of connectivity to our education sector. So I think them in that space, because it isn't about training people so they can work on a National Highways project. It is about connectivity to our skills sector. So I do feel there's space there. The one thing that for me that I would like to ask, and it probably should come up later, but I'll ask it now, and maybe you'll wish to park it, Chair, is how can the Employment and Skills Board that works for this committee, how can it help in this space, in this area of need? Because we regularly meet with employers and with further education principals and other people. What would you charge that body to do, and how would we engage with them to make sure they're helping and contributing towards this debate?
Thanks, Vic. That's a really interesting question. Vic, we can hear you beautifully and we can see your hands beautifully. We can't actually see your face, which mostly is excellent. Sorry, it's not excellent. We can't see your face. It's really good to be able to hear you. It might be good to be able to see your face. In terms of how the Employment and Skills Board can help with this work, I mean, I think it is really important that we focus on the outcome of the work. Thank you, that the consultants are doing, and the next step needs to be to allow them to do that work and see what the what comes from that, because I think the next stages of this piece of work need to flow from the data that comes from that piece of work by the consultants. So I suppose at this point, the most useful thing is just to flag up to local businesses and employers and others that this work is happening. I think that for me, one of the key things that needs to come out kind of as part of the next step is, I don't think we have any, we should not have any fixed ideas about how improved variety and quality of FE provision is delivered in those places. my personal view is that we should be pretty clear that improved provision needs to be delivered. So how it's done will need to come out of that project and from discussions with our FE partners and all sorts of other things. But the fact that there is better provision for young people in that area does need to happen. So the more that local businesses can be engaged in thinking about what their future needs for skills are and engaging with us generally about that and in those areas perhaps more specifically, so that when we've got that data back in the spring, we can start feeding a whole lot of information into how we do that. I think that would be really helpful. So I think at this point, gathering information about the skills needs, we are doing that as a combined authority anyway in a variety of different places. But the more that they can engage with that, the better. And just to be aware that this work is ongoing and that we will have more information in the spring about what ways of delivering it are likely to be feasible, and that would be really so awareness and more information on skills needs going forward, which we always need, if that's useful. Again, Parminder, if you want to add anything, indicate. If not, I've got Sam who wants to come in again. Sam.
Yeah, just briefly, I think there's observations bring us back to where Councillor Wilson started us, really, because as I know you've and we've articulated in other contexts as well, in many ways, given the interrelationship of the factors here, including across the areas that the combined authority is responsible for, there's going forward at subsequent changes going to be a challenge for sort of us and our structures in terms of that joint working piece, because as was rightly underlined, even though there are enormously exciting new developments in various ways, even if there might not be an east-west station quite as close to St Neots as some of us would have liked ongoing, there are the enormous transport challenges, and so considering how we link areas of work across up our sort of committee as well as directorate structures in the combined authority is going to be a challenge, but it's one that we I think have visibility of already, and so can be thinking about as we move forward.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions on this. Thank you very much to Parminder and to Claire, who I know also helped chase this to make sure that it was actually procured. It's really good to know that that next piece of this jigsaw is now underway. We will get, I mean, I think our next report on this is likely to be in the spring, looking at that timeline. I think we probably won't get a report back before that. So thank you very much for the report, Parminder, which I think was again for noting. I don't see any further questions, so we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the state of the economy, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. That's quite a substantial introduction. So Dominic, I think, will be online. Yes, he is there. Dominic, are you happy to introduce this one? Sorry, Domenico, are you there? Yes, excellent. We can
Yes.
see you now.
Apologies, sorry.
That's
I thought there was another Dominic online.
No, it was my fault for getting your name wrong. Apologies. Thank you, Domenico. If you're ready to introduce the report, that would be really helpful. Bother, we seem to have lost him just at the moment when we particularly wanted him to be there. I think given that we seem to have lost Domenico, I'm not actually sure whether we've got anyone else who could introduce that report brilliantly. So we might move, let's just switch the agenda around and hope that he reappears. We might go to the Employment and Skills Board update, which is Liz. Is that all right, Liz, given that Domenico has disappeared? Liz is fortunately here in the room and not disappeared. So, are you happy to take this report now? And then we'll come back to that one. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So we wanted to give a verbal update. So there isn't a paper as such on the Employment and Skills Board, but a few updates to give, really. So as part of my role going forwards, I'll be coordinating the Employment and Skills Board. And as part of that...
Sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Domenico,
apologies.
that's fine. Because you disappeared, I asked Liz to take the next item on the agenda. Are you happy to just do that and wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll come back to you?
So apologies.
That's fine. Liz, carry on.
Sure. So yeah, as part of the coordination of the board, we're also looking at sort of the operational processes and delivery of the board, and any updates with regards to that. So I just quickly wanted to do a bit of a rewind. We've seen obviously new members to committees and also new members to CPCA as staff. So just as a quick sort of rewind, the actual role of the Employment and Skills Board, it is an advisory board to the Skills Committee, and we should be, through that board, providing strategic skills advice, and we should be supporting decision making, and members of the board are from organisations that are operating across the region, ideally within the key sectors and ranging from public and private sector. So I think some of that might have been a little bit lost or a little bit of sort of unheard over the time that the board's been operating, and so now I think is a good time to re-energise the board. Or so yeah. So as part of that, Al Kingsley was the chair of the Employment and Skills Board, and recently has been appointed chair of Business Board, and so we were seeking a new chair for the Employment and Skills Board. It's a lot of boards. And really pleased to say that Vic Annals, who's obviously joining online today, has been appointed as chair of the Employment and Skills Board, and chaired the first as chair in October, which was a really positive meeting, actually. And alongside the new chair, we are also looking at the membership of the board. So we had quite a big discussion in the October board with existing members. I think everybody was in agreement at that time that we haven't got as much industry representation and sector representation on the board at the moment. So we are looking for new membership as part of the board. And then finally, I also wanted to just sort of say with the agenda and the alignment of the board, we really going forwards want to make sure that actually members of the Employment and Skills Board are fully aware of the forward plan on Skills Committee. They have got the opportunity to fully feed into what we discuss on these committees, and so as part of my role, I will be making sure that going forwards the Employment and Skills Board is much more aligned to committee and provider forums and everything else that we do really alongside skills. You will have seen in the papers for Skills Committee, you'd have had the link to the agenda from the October Employment and Skills Board. You hopefully have seen from that there has been, similarly to today, there was quite a bit of discussion around apprenticeships in the October Skills Board through CITB and through the UCAS update that we had during the board. And Chair, I think you referenced earlier when Vic asked a question of how can the board feed into Skills Committee with the FE cold spots, and there was a sort of plea to make sure that the Employment and Skills Board were kept up to date and informed about what was happening with that. That was featured in the October agenda on the board, and we did have some discussion around that. I'm just going to stop for a second and just actually ask Vic whether he wanted to mention anything else that I've not already mentioned as part of this update.
Just to say apologies for sort of slightly jumping the gun by asking the question because it was just so topical. about how can our board work aligned. And you know, I knew you were going to present this, and you've done that extremely well. I will say this. I will say that I think the will of all the members, be they principals of our colleges or be they representing employers, the will to make this a success is huge. There are people that are very, very committed to making this a success. And what we need to do is we need to add a few more people, like-minded people, into that space. But to be able to do that, the Employment and Skills Board has got to have a positive role in some way, and it's got to have an impact. And the way that I see it can have an impact is by serving the Skills Committee a little bit more closely, which I think, you know, Liz, you've just said extremely well. But it's critical that we get tasked by the Skills Committee to do things, and also the Skills Committee listen then to what the Employment and Skills Board is doing on behalf of the Combined Authority. So I just want to say, look, thanks also to Liz and all the members for tolerating me as the person looking after it and being the chair. And I just think we've got such a great opportunity here, because I couldn't believe the passion of everybody there, and really wanting to make this into something really tangible. So well done, Liz. Good explanation. Thank you.
Yes, just to add very briefly to Vic, we met at the Chamber of Commerce a week or so ago, and had for me, and I hope for you, a brilliant kind of positive, energetic and challenging conversation, which is exactly as it should be. You know, for me, challenge, being able to test ideas, get a sounding board and expertise is absolutely critical. So I'm really looking forward to working for you. And the only other thing I would say is that we will try as much as we can, and I'm looking at this, and I hope I'm not saying anything wrong, to cut down the number of papers that you get so we can really get some active discussion. And I know we're at one with that.
Thank you. Just before I bring any other members in, it's really exciting to hear that there is that energy and that real desire to make the Employment and Skills Board work really effectively with the Skills Committee to improve the offer that we have for young people in our area. And I think there is a lot of energy around trying to make that better. I'm quite aware that I suspect that a number of people on the Employment and Skills Board don't know who sits on the Skills Committee, and I suspect that a number of people who sit on the Skills Committee don't know who sits on the Employment Board. And at some point, it would probably be really helpful to try and get everyone in a room together, so that we know who we're talking about, because having those having an understanding about who is sitting in which place and what they're bringing to the table, I think will make that relationship more effective. So maybe that's something that we can put as an action on our action log, to try and find some kind of time where we can have the Skills Committee and the Employment and Skills Board in the same place, even if it's just for lunch or coffee or something, so that people can meet each other, because I do think that makes these kinds of relationships much more effective. Vic.
I just want to give you a teaser on that. Members of our ESB are Ross Renton, of course, from AOU, and also Mark Robertson, and they're two of our, you know, key collaborators in that space, and they are active members of the board.
Great, thank you. Yep. Any other questions for Liz or Vic on this? I haven't heard anyone object to my idea of getting together, so we'll take that away and see if we can organise it. Lovely, thank you very much, Liz. Domenico is still with us, so fingers crossed we can come back to that report now. Domenico, are you happy to present?
Thank you, and apologies for the IT gremlins. Good morning, Skills Committee and members. So this paper is just giving a quick overview of the recent State of the Economy report that we undertook earlier this year, which towards the end of August, kind of early September time. Really looking at the latest kind of data sets and evidence that are available on the local economy, and to start pulling together the kind of analysis of that data that can be fed into kind of other policy strategies and other work that we're working on. The main piece of work that this is feeding into is a State of the Region report, which is currently underway with CPCA officers and other colleagues. and that's expected hopefully to be completed and draft early in the new year. So this analysis, this review, forms part of that economic input into that wider review of the region. I'm not going to go through the attachment in great detail, but members will see that yes, there are still economic challenges that exist, not least with high inflation and obviously other uncertainties surrounding the economy. But as a positive coming out of the review, Cambridge and Peterborough is showing slightly more positive signs of recovery than other areas. There's plenty of positives coming out of especially Cambridge and its pharmaceutical sectors and life science sectors are showing strong recovery, as well as our agri-tech sectors. But we are seeing a slight slowdown in manufacturing sectors, and we are obviously keeping an eye on that to see what we can do to reverse any kind of negative impacts on that sector as part of our priority. That's really all I wanted to say. It's been to the business board. It went to the business board in September for them to note, and it's obviously following on to the skills committee for you members to note as well. Vic and Nitin, they're obviously on today, and they can maybe add anything else they want to add in terms of how it was received by the business board. We've obviously taken on the comments that were made by the business board members, and that's formed part of the kind of feedback to the team working on the state of the region. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Domenico. I'm delighted that the gremlins have stayed away for long enough for you to present. So that's great.
It's probably something I've done, to be honest.
It's fine. These things happen. There's a vast amount of information in this, and obviously it's of use for the whole of the combined authority, not just us, but there is also important information for us in here. Any questions from members on it? Or comments, actually? While members think about it, I'm just going to make a very quick comment myself, which is that one of the key things which I think is coming out of both the national data and our local data is that the productivity gaps that were there pre-pandemic seem to be only getting worse post-pandemic. And I think coming back to the discussion that we've been having kind of on and off all the way through this meeting about apprenticeships and about the need to make sure that we are making sure that training opportunities are available to people across the whole area, that is clearly going to be one of the things which helps tackle that problem. I think we also need to be mindful of Eileen's comments about the impact of transport on people's ability to access improved employment. So but that's for a different CPCA committee, but it's important for us to be mindful of its impact too. Any other comments on the economic update? It is a really important document for the whole combined authority, I think. Eileen.
So this is going to be pretty obvious, is that looking at the risks around electricity and water is I think a major factor. I'm teaching grandma to suck eggs here, but and I wonder how all of this fits in with the government's Cambridgeshire 2040 ambitions.
Yes, no, thank you. Thank you. So it does feed into the kind of wider 2040 work that we're responding to. We're also making sure that it's feeding into the stuff that Steve Clark was talking about earlier. We are looking, beyond growth works and what it is that we do as a combined authority in terms of business support and the kind of areas that we're prioritising in terms of economic growth and areas of intervention. So this will form part of that kind of wider input into that kind of to determine what our kind of plan of action is going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Domenico. We're impressed with your willingness to try and answer a question that none of us wanted to answer. Nick.
Domenico, we were just saying, well done on starting the conversation. I think you probably hit the nail on the head from a point of discussion, and unfortunately we could spiral out of control here. I think what I would recognise is the importance of this kind of report and the idea of the combined authority pulling together something which will be known going forward as the state of the region. I think it is very important that we have taken the time to collate this evidence, and it's, I think, important when we are engaging, be it the combined authority or indeed any of the local authorities that are having those conversations with the central government's 2040 plans, and particularly Peter Freeman, that we demonstrate that we are already collecting the data and we're not kind of going round repetitive loops. We are very keen to work with central government as much as with our partners, and although there's a lot in this report which is to be celebrated, I think it comes with a huge amount of concern, voiced not just around committees like this, or also at the board, at the combined authority, the voices of our public, the people who are covered by the combined authority area, almost 1 million, and particularly those in the south of the region who say that proposals around growth need to be done in the right way, mindful of environment, mindful of not exacerbating further inequalities. And I think having the data and owning the data and being proud to put that forward as this is where we want to go forward is part of the improvement journey that I've certainly seen over the last year and a half. And I just wanted to say thank you to Domenico in bringing the report, but also the huge amount of team in the combined authority behind this, pulling it together. So thank you for letting me have my moment. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got lots of hands now. Sam Colling.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very mixed picture overall. If I may just probe a couple of points in the data that I was interested in. On page 162, this is where one of the mentions of productivity figures. Are the percentage increases accounting for inflation at all when we're looking at gross of GVA? That was one question. Again, on page 162, there's a reference to education and training achievements, but I'm not specifically sure what an achievement is defined as in that context. There's a reference to Cambridge having the lowest across districts there, which is interesting because we do often see Cambridge and South Cambridge as being perhaps in less need of investment than some of the other districts under the combined authority, which is true, but it's not all roses really. Cambridge does have some very deprived areas, and sometimes I think we may overlook that a little bit. On page 172, this is of the overall pack, but not the report itself, the overall gender pack. Looking at the employment figures, I wondered if the life sciences ones in particular are accounting for PhD students, whether they're included in the figures there, because there is a significant number of them in the Greater Cambridge area, and that might impact things slightly when we're looking at that. And then the only other question I had was the extrapolation on 167. There's a reference to that being based on historic growth rates from 1998 to 2021. And I wondered what the logic is behind using that period of time for the extrapolation when we didn't have the combined authority here until 2017. So I would perhaps have hoped that the introduction of the combined authority might mean that we're not really following that baseline trend anymore, that we are improving things. I wonder why that's the baseline, but thanks.
Thank you. So just responding to your points in order. So just your first point around, has productivity been taken into account? It would have done to the extent where the rate of impact was known. There's obviously uncertainty around inflation, which has been increasing quite significantly over the last kind of periods. So as much as we can, I understand that the consultants did factor that into their analysis in terms of in taking that into consideration. The achievement levels, I agree, and it's something that we are working to address the kind of the different levels of deputy across Cambridge and Peterborough, not least in some certain pockets which we're aware of, and I'm sure that was taken account of, but it probably hasn't come out clearly within the report. Your other point about the employment figures, I'm not exactly entirely 100% sure on that, but what I would say is that they would only be able to count what would be full-time employment positions, and there might be some circumstances where that doesn't fall under that broad kind of that kind of category, and it's kind of falls under a broader kind of maybe temporary contracts or temporary positions. which are not taken into account. And then the baseline, I suspect that this is probably the availability of the last kind of the kind of last available data sets that were made publicly available and from which data can be drawn. There's obviously been work to update those over the kind of last kind of year or two, but it's the readiness and availability of that data. So I think the consultants have done the most with what's readily available, but with the caveat that more can be done once more data and more insight becomes available and confirmed in the public domain.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been really helpful. Just going back to the education and training achievements, how exactly was achievement being defined in that context? This is on page 162 again.
Yeah, I'm not sure on exactly the definition that was used.
Sure.
And if I may, Chair, that's something that we can follow up with the committee once I've double checked with Metro Dynamics.
Thank you. Other Sam.
Thank you. Just reflecting on that, I wonder if Sam has highlighted a factor that if we're not keeping track of, might be worth thinking about opportunities too in terms of the sort of PhD studentships, because they're not employees. So my assumption is that they're not counted, but they in lots of the high skill sectors are sort of the pipeline of potential next recruits into roles. Whether there's depending on the nature of that picture, that where there is a disparity, as there often is in the more pure HE as opposed to sort of translational sector, between student opportunities and then employment opportunities, that would also give us a perspective on possible kind of capacity gaps, and feels like data that would be worth us taking into account, particularly given the concentration of studentships I'm sure we do have in some of the higher skilled sectors. So I thought that was an excellent point that hadn't occurred to me previously, but I do think it's worth us reflecting on.
Can I add something else before you come back in, Domenico? Just while we're talking about data, I think that an awful lot of the data on which this is based is 2021 data. There's obviously been quite a lot of time that's gone past since 2021, and quite a lot has changed in the UK economy since 2021. I think it's probably because that's the last data set that the ONS had available, and therefore we don't have anything before that. I was just wondering whether you have any idea about when 2022 or even ideally 2023 data might be available, because I suspect it will show quite significant changes, and it would be really useful for us to be able to see what those are. And again, if you don't know that yet, perhaps if you could just include it in a future update, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Chair. So I suggest I agree with your latter point, and I think that it's something that we do need to follow up with, be it whether it's with Metro Dynamics or other specialists. We do need to follow up in terms of what is the latest position in terms of economic data, and we will commit to coming back to the Skills Committee and the Business Board with a further update around that. And I will also pick up your point around the kind of the point made by Sam around the concentration of PhD students. So that's a couple of actions for us to take away from this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions. So thank you very much for the report, which is very helpful in spite of the fact that it's a bit out of date. Really, really lots of really useful information in there. Again, I think that is for noting. We will now move on to, thank you very much, Domenico.
Thank you.
We will now move on to the budget report, which Bruna will be presenting.
Hello, nice to see you all. It's always a pleasure to meet you all. So as usual, I bring your finance update, tell you a bit more about how we perform against our MTFP and our budget throughout the life of the skill team, and what are the issues and things we can highlight to you. So in relation to income, the grant income at the moment was budgeted to be £17.5 million, is now being reduced to £15.6 million. So the variance of nearly 1.8 million is related to bootcamp, which we are expecting to get some of these funds in next financial year has certain base due to the delivery of the program and how the program is delivered. And so you can see it within the deferral. Other things you can see there is a reduction in AB. This is just simply a deduction from an underspend of the previous year that's implied this year we get a little bit less money. We have them, but we're not getting as much. This is all about income in relation to expenditure, revenue expenditure. We can see we were originally budgeted to spend 22.6 million. We are now expecting to spend 20.5 million pounds. The difference, that is 2.1 million, is again allocated partially to bootcamp, because of course we will deliver next year, so we will spend the money next year. And both of them actually are bootcamp. One is an underspendment and under delivery on way free that we knew about it and it's been there for a long time. It's not new to this committee. And the other one is way four that, of course, as we said, the delivery, some of it will be next financial year. That means this is where it's going to go. Also, the report itself will contain a section about the recosted MTFP. Unfortunately, has been omitted from your report at the moment, but the appendix is up to date. It's just the narrative attached to this specific part of the main core document that is not available. So as you know, we have done the MTFP, so the recosting of the mid-term financial plan. The big variances in relation to the skill team, they are related to the recognition of the UK SPF funded skill program that is now coming to live in January. That of course it wasn't planned last year. The reprofile of bootcamp that we know well because we always speak about it. Free cost of a job likewise. And the other thing is highlight the increase of the top slice AB that we agreed during the committee in the past that will support us to make sure that we can do a more accurate support to AB team in general, to ABT activities in general. The revised corporate, the revised MTFP is going to the November combined authority, so the one that is going to be at the end of this month. And of course, if you have anything you wish to put forward and question and everything related to the MTFP, please pass it to your chair so the chair can then express it. I'm sure that I know that my manager Rob Emery is and Nick Bell, they are both working towards putting together and speaking with all of you about it anyway. But as well, please direct any question to me.
Thank you very much, Bruno. I think it's important to emphasise that a number of those underspends are not actual underspends; they're just shifts in the year in which we will be spending the money. So it's not that the activity will not happen. It's just that the money comes in a different year, partly due to changes in the way programs are being managed. Any other questions, comments on this? Eileen?
I was just looking at the at 3.3, 2 and 3, where the underspend will be deducted from the 23-24 funding allocation. Will this affect in any way the work of the skills team going forward? The having that money deducted by Department for Education.
Sorry, it's my fault. I was too keen. No, because that's implied that we haven't spent so much last financial year. So the plan for this financial year will be unaffected. Actually, that's implied that some of the money are already now available for us to use now instead of wait for the DFE to give it to us. I mean, of course, the progress that we will have completed last year if we were doing all the whole work before will have been further. But overall, the plan shouldn't be effective.
I think just for further clarity, we've been spending as much of the bootcamp money as we can possibly persuade people to take up courses. So there won't be any impact on. We're still trying to persuade as many people to take up bootcamp courses as we possibly can. We will continue to try and persuade as many bootcamp people to take up courses. And anyone watching, please, if you're interested in a bootcamp, get in touch. They're really good, but it won't. I mean, none of that finance will make any difference. We are still just wanting to get as many people through those courses as we possibly can. The one thing here which I do think is slightly disappointing is the stuff about the delays due to capacity issues in the AEB budgets and the FE cold spots work, because those are things where actually if we had managed to do the work that we'd planned to do this year, we would be 6 months ahead, and we should have been having the report that we've got coming in spring this autumn, so that the work would have been happening more quickly. So there are some issues here that have been created due to lack of capacity at the combined authority, which will just slow down the pace of things we're going to be able to do. But they're relatively small amounts of money in the grand scheme of things. The large amounts of money are just that we would love to be able to persuade more people to take up bootcamp courses, and please carry on spreading the word. They're really good. And we won't be having any fewer learners. It's just that we haven't managed to bring the number of learners in. And just to flag again that this is an issue that's been coming to this committee for a while. We were very clear 2 years ago that the way in which the government was making this money available with very, very short time scales was deeply unhelpful in persuading people to come and do these courses. And that has improved. It's just that this is the kind of time lag effect. Bruna.
I just want to reassure everybody that we are actually working on a plan to make sure that we fully engage on the remaining of the resources for the AB suite as it is. We will move forward shiftly to make a much more of the changes going forward. Thanks to the team to work hard on it anyway, because I'm just counting the beans.
Thank you very much. That's quite right. Again, I don't see any further comments or questions. And again, I think that one is for noting. So thank you very much, Bruna. That is noted. We will now move on to the Skills and Employment Committee agenda plan, which I think I've added a couple of things to during the meeting, but particularly possibly meeting up with the Skills and Employment Board. Is there anything else you wanted to update us on, Joe? Or any other comments or questions? Sorry, Joe.
Sorry, no, I have nothing further to add on it.
Anybody else? No. Wonderful. That's admirably brief. That is noted. And we now move, before we come to item 13, to the exclusion of the press and public, because we do need to take item 13 in private session. I'm going to try and explain why, and I hope I get it right. Claire, tell me if I don't. This is because some of the data that we are going to be discussing in the performance review of the skills funded provision is as yet, it's not confirmed yet. So the information that's in this will probably come in, will certainly come into the public domain at some point, but because it's not confirmed, we need to discuss it in private session. So if you are all happy, I would like to propose that we move into private session for the next item so that we can freely discuss the project performance data contained in the exempt appendix. So I will now take it to a vote and ask members to indicate whether they are happy to move into private session. Do I need a seconder for that, or just a general vote? Okay, if you are happy to move into private session, if you could indicate now, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we will stop the live stream.